Super Mario 64 was a 3D action-adventure platformer game released for the Nintendo 64 in 1996. Together with two others, they were the first games to be released for this new console. It had sold over 11 million copies worldwide, and is marked as the best-selling N64 game of all time. It was the first ever 3D Mario game, so as expected, it had a gigantic impact on the franchise, and introduced many moves that would be used in almost every later Super Mario title. However, Nintendo actually had more plans for this legendary title that got them so much praise from the industry. In 1996, there was a Nintendo 64 DD disc version of the game, shown at Shoshin-Kai, and there was also a sequel called Super Mario 64 2 planned for the Nintendo 64 DD, but it was cancelled in the end. So today, we're going to look into the sequel that they were planning, to find out what their idea was and how it failed in the end. Let's start with our first point. What was Nintendo's plan of making this all happen? Well, all of this kind of started before Super Mario 64 was released, because they were planning on making an N64 add-on called the Nintendo 64 Disk Drive, or Nintendo 64 DD for short. This was a magnetic disk drive peripheral for the console and was originally announced in 1995, prior to Nintendo 64's 1996 launch, and after numerous delays was finally released in Japan on December 1st, 1999. Plugging it into the extension port on the underside of the console, it allows the device to use 64 megabit magnetic discs for expanded and rewritable data storage, a real-time clock for persistent game world design, and a standard font and audio library for further storage efficiency. Furthermore, the 64DD software titles and hardware accessories let the users create movies, characters and animations to be used within various games and shared online. The system could connect to the internet through a now closed dedicated online service called RadNet for e-commerce, online gaming and media sharing. Now, all of this was supposed to give the Nintendo 64 a longer lifespan and would open the doors in terms of game design and technological development. Several games and extension packs were in development for this add-on, and one of those was Super Mario 64 2.
It was going to have the same graphics and style as its predecessor. The only other known information about it are the facts that Mario's brother Luigi was going to be a playable character and that only one demo for the game was ever made. But sadly enough, this demo was never released to the public, nor has any footage of said demo ever surfaced ever since. Even when we wrote the script, we couldn't find any footage on the internet whatsoever, so yes. As far as we know, it's nowhere to be found. But according to our source, a demo of a 64DD version of Super Mario 64 surfaced in 2014. It is not a full sequel as the rumors stated, but appears to be an improved version of the original release with better textures, music, and loading times. However, we aren't sure if this is true, so take it with a grain of salt. Now in the end, Nintendo did kind of create this game, because in 2004, Super Mario 64 DS was released. This title took several traits from Super Mario 64 2, because Yoshi, Luigi, and Wario all became playable characters. So in the end, we sort of got what we wanted. All the features that would be coming were seen in this remake and games that came after, like Super Mario Galaxy. However, why did they end up cancelling this title? Because we never saw it anywhere in stores after all. Well, this is because of the N64DD. Because there was a multi-year period of many repeated launch delays, which created even more delays and complications of many other business processes and product launches for Nintendo and its partners. After a lot of trouble, it was finally seen on December 1st, 1999 in Japan, as a package called the RadNet Starter Kit, which includes 6 games bi-monthly through the mail and a year of internet service. Anticipating that its long-planned peripheral would become a commercial failure, Nintendo initially sold the RadNet Starter Kit via mail order. Later, very limited quantities of the standalone 64DD and games were made available through stores. As you could have expected, this whole plan didn't work out in any way. From the start, it was doomed to fail. And so, the discontinuation of the 64DD and RadNet was announced in October 2000, at a time when there were reportedly 15,000 subscribers. Which isn't a whole lot, considering that the console sold around 5.5 million units in Japan. Only 9 official discs, including 3 third-party games and 1 internet application suite were released for it. Most planned 64DD games were either released as cartridge-based Nintendo 64 games, as cartridge size had increased, ported to other consoles, such as Nintendo's next-generation GameCube console, or cancelled entirely. And so, the second Super Mario 64 game was cancelled, and they started to focus more on the console. The elements that they wanted to add were later on put into games like Super Mario Galaxy, and that's about it. However, were there more reasons for Nintendo to scrap this game and the N64DD's failure? Well, there were two other things that kind of forced Nintendo to abandon it all and start with something new. First of all, the N64 was at the end of its life cycle at that point, so this was probably one of the reasons why Nintendo left it behind them and focused on a new project, the Nintendo GameCube. Now, the second big reason was how the console was doing compared to their previous console and the competition. We all know that Nintendo was the king of video games in early years and kind of revived it when they came around the corner. There was a first boom in the arcade business with giants like Atari still dominating the market since the late 1970s. But the influence of the home computer and a lack of quality in the games themselves led to an implosion of the North American video game market that nearly destroyed the industry.
It took home consoles years to recover from the crash, but Nintendo filled in the void with its Nintendo Entertainment System, reviving interest in consoles. Thanks to this, they held a good position for a long time, with their second console, the SNES, selling almost 50 million units. However, after this period, it all went a bit downhill. The N64 only ended up selling about 30 million, which is significantly less than the previous. One big reason for this is the rise of the new superpower called Sony, with its new PlayStation console. This one ended up destroying Nintendo in terms of sales, ending up with more than 3 times the amount Nintendo had. So the PlayStation sold a whopping 102 million, while the N64 was at 33 million at the end. This was probably a big factor in shutting down projects related to the console, like Super Mario 64 too. It just didn't perform well enough. If it ended up selling like the Game Boy or 3DS, for example, then they would have supported and released games for it well into the future. Just look at the current situation of the Nintendo handheld line. They still bring out stuff for the 3DS. However, this wasn't the case for the N64. And so the console, add-ons and sequel to Super Mario 64 were cancelled. So sadly enough, we will probably never see this game in our lives, but now we at least know what they wanted to do and what went wrong in the end. And another thing you can find out is how to click the subscribe button, because I'm gonna tell you now, you just click the little red button and the bell button and you won't miss any videos. It's great, right? Yeah, it's an amazing feature. Thank YouTube. You can also watch more videos, that would be great. Yay.